being able to recognize that grief and joy can coexist, even though they feel like opposites because they share from the same soil, right? The emotional soil, right? So here I go with my plants. I got to do my plant-based. We gotta go with the theme here. So they share the same emotional soil, right? But what happens is grief deepens our capacity for joy because it reminds us of what matters.
Mm.
Welcome to Sensitive Stories. This episode is for educational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for treatment with a mental health or medical professional. Let's dive in.
Hi, Angelique. Welcome back to the podcast. So happy to have you here again.
Thank you, thank you. I'm so excited to be back here, April. Yeah.
Yes. So, folks might remember you were on episode 61. We talked about cycle breaking and families, but today we're switching gears a little bit. We're going to be talking about grief.
Yes.
Very important topic. And, often we associate grief with death, but, there's
hmm
so many ways that grief shows up in our lives, I think, in ways we don't even realize. Could you talk about
hmm
that? When does grief show up for us? Maybe what does it look like?
Yeah, absolutely right. It does show up anytime when we experience loss, so like you experience, like you talked about, like not just through death, but sometimes it's just through changes in our identity, our relationships, our roles, or even just the seasons of life, right? So I feel like for a highly sensitive empath like myself, it's often layered, right? There's kind of like that quiet ache,
Mm.
sometimes even just that sudden tearfulness, right? Or numbness. But even that is like our body shutting down, like saying like I need to slow down. Something meaningful is about to shift.
Yes. Oh, thank you for putting it into that word. The quiet ache, the layers,
hmm
right? There's so
hmm
many ways that that shows up for us because anytime anything could change. And it's not just
hmm
externally, but also internally.
Absolutely.
Yes, exactly. And so when you're working with grief, whether it's personally or with clients, how are you approaching that? I think you have different pillars that you bring into your work. I'd love to
Yes.
hear more about that.
Absolutely. I love this question because I really do believe in the four pillars of healing, and I'll just explain a little bit about what those are.
Yeah.
So, when I process grief with others, when they are going through that ache, that busyness or experience, I really like to ask the first question, which is their connection. So, the number one piece of my kind of my branding is like leaning into safe people. Are we safe with ourselves? Are we safe with our community? Are we feeling connected or feeling that disconnect? Because a lot of times can grief feel like there's a disconnect, this loss, this aching, longing away from someone. So we want to almost like isolate from others, right? Um, and so then the second one is nature. And I love this, which is allowing the earth to hold our emotions, right? For us highly sensitive empaths, it's like can be as simple as walking and breathing and kind of noticing some of the cycles of decay and rebirth, right?
Mm.
Which is kind of a interesting way to talk about it. So it's more like the ecosystem. Like I do like walk and talks, right?
Oh,
I
yes.
even I even encourage my clients to, it sounds silly, but like when they go on their next hike, go yell in a forest, right?
It's
Right.
powerful.
It is, right. And so
Mhm.
I encourage that and actually want them to embody it in our session. So that's like the second pillar. The
Mm.
last two, which is so important, which, as a registered play therapist, I have to talk about play, right? Like, can we even experience joy with grief? Well, yes, you can reclaim it through play, right?
Mm.
So softening a little bit of that rigidity that happens with grief, right?
Yeah.
Through an expression of creativity, so coloring, maybe listening to a song that you are thinking about that loved one, and mourning and allowing the tears to flow. Maybe you're just kind of drawing art, writing, journaling, just being able to express the emotion in a way that's playful, right? And last but not least is books. I'm a big book girly. I love to read books. One of my favorite ones for grief is Crying at H Mart.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
A wonderful book that talks about a young lady who's lost her mother, and she's just explaining like we do this everyday thing of going to a marketplace, and yet we're crying, right?
Right.
Because maybe a song comes on, or you pick up a favorite food. And so I encourage my clients in the fourth pillar of grieving through books, reading others' pain, so you don't feel so alone.
Hmm. Yeah. I feel like you're shaking up the idea of what grief can look like with these four
Hmm.
pillars.
Hmm.
First off, kind of bringing in a little bit of levity, joy,
Right.
connection. And connection can look a lot of different ways, whether you're reading it on the page, you're connecting through nature, you're connecting through other people that are safe. But you're kind of filling those holes that are creative, reminding yourself, I'm safe, I'm connected, I'm not alone here. Oh, and play, which I would never think about with grief, but it makes sense that you need to be able to reclaim those parts of yourself, that they're not gone forever,
Right.
that there can be comfort in that. And play for adults, I assume, as well, not just
Hmm.
kids.
Right, exactly.
Mm.
And I mean, even with kiddos, like I like to use sand tray, and if I see immediately when a kid is talking about grief, they may not share it with me, like I lost my father, but they'll put a tombstone in the sand
Yes.
tray,
Can
right?
for maybe folks who don't know what a sand tray is, who haven't done that in therapy or
Yeah.
haven't experienced that, could you
Yes.
describe a little bit about what a sand tray is?
So I will tell you that true disclaimer fashion here is like everyone can do sand tray. So I just
Uh-huh.
want to say that adults, kids, everything. And so what it is just a small pit of sand. That it's just a small container of sand.
Hmm.
Think about folks who used to kind of rake, like have the little mini
Yeah.
comb and rake and the Zen and the rock and stuff. But what it actually looks like in true form is just having like I said, a container of sand, usually having blue cloth underneath to represent water,
Oh,
right?
right.
To be
Yep.
underneath the sand tray. And so a lot of times a play therapist like myself would say, create your world. And we open it for that reason. And so you get to go pick little mini figurines, little toys that represent what your world looks like. And we
Mm-hmm.
we don't ever ask the questions of, well, what does that mean? Does that mean your mom? Does this mean that? Does that takes away the process?
Yeah.
But really it's a space to ask the question, oh, I wonder what this means, or I'm curious about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I love to use it with my adults who maybe have a hard time even processing and sharing out loud what they're feeling.
Right.
So just
Yeah.
the feeling of sand. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love it because it's sensory. You can dig your hands in
Hmm.
and you can work out that
Hmm.
emotion without
Yeah.
words. But also, right,
Right.
you can, whether you are aware of it or not, you might be drawn to certain symbols, whether it is that more obvious
Right.
tombstone or it's something a little maybe indirect.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
are there other ways we can kind of do some of that? As I'm thinking, if I'm in nature, what if I'm drawn to a leaf or a stick or a rock? Could that also bring in some of those elements of imagery or metaphor?
Absolutely. I love that piece because I really encourage my clients to do a nature journal.
What is that?
So, nature journaling is just how it sounds, where you go outside and you can collect pieces of Earth, like you said. So the rocks, I mean, if you're near a beach, seashells. I'm
Yeah.
landlocked, so I'm not really quite able to get the
Right.
seashells, but I got acorns and
Mm,
all those things that I just love to collect. With my kiddos, of course, and then kind of creating art. So again, creating art that symbolizes a leaf falling off a tree and it represents death, decay, right? But it's very sensory based. So, and you can journal about your experience, feeling the cool air coming from your lungs, all those kind of things.
yeah, when I think about doing those types of things, it's like anchors me back here, reminds me I'm safe, I'm not alone, I'm kind of part of
Hmm.
something bigger than
Hmm.
myself.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so therapeutic. And
Yeah.
just also just moving your body and is, being in bed and grieving in that sense of kind of shutting things down is helpful to a
Right.
point. But after a
To a
while, I
point.
find that I need to re-engage with the world in a way that's accessible.
And we know that grief is different for everybody, right?
Yeah,
And
right,
the way we process grief has to look different, is different, and it's not linear, right?
right,
The misnomer here is like we use the five stages of grief, but that was made for someone in hospice. So like the stages within the next place,
right.
right? It's not a fluid motion, it's not linear, right?
Yeah,
And it shows up differently with kids. They're saying there's routine, there's loss, there's no sense of safety and structure anymore because
right.
either I lost my favorite animal, right? Or um, I'm wrestling with my own identity, right, in this family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
sometimes there's no words to like share that with. So love to
Yeah.
just invite sand tray as an
Mm-hmm.
alternative, or let's go a walk and talk because that bilateral stimulation, or for folks on a call not familiar with that, it's just your brain being able to process and think while you're moving your legs right in front of you, right?
Yeah. So helpful that back and forth, side to side.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. With the four pillars that use connection, nature, play, books, it made me think of this because you just talked about the five stages of grief not being linear. Like you're going to move into denial, to anger, to acceptance, back
Hmm.
and forth over and over.
Yeah, bargaining. Yeah.
Bargaining, right? Depression. For your four pillars, are those, if someone is in the grieving process, are we doing all four? Are we picking and choosing? What would you say?
We're, that's a wonderful question. And I love that. I want to give the person the choice,
Yeah.
right? There is no, okay, let's do play for one session, then we're gonna go walk and talk. It's just like, it's like there is no like one, two, three, four step. It's
Yeah.
just I integrate those practices as part of the healing
Yeah.
with grief, not from grief, because grief moves through different stages, right?
Hmm. So it's more of
So,
a menu than a checklist.
it's a menu.
It's a
Yeah, it's
menu.
all could be a la carte.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Could be four course
So,
meal.
maybe core force, hey, whatever you want. But that's
Yeah.
just what my big thing is moral injury. That's like a
Hmm.
really big. Are you familiar with moral injury?
I don't think so. Could you tell me what it is?
Hmm. So, as a side, that might take you off a little bit from the grief, but
That's okay.
this is
Yeah.
so moral injury, the basic term to operational define it, it really means when someone or something, someone bear witnesses
Mm-hmm.
to someone in leadership or something in the world or something in their family that violates their inner moral code,
Makes
right?
sense. Mm-hmm.
And we have found, especially now, given kind of this presidency and all that kind of stuff, bearing witness to ICE raids, bearing witness to No King's protests, bearing witness
Yeah.
to just this constant political, socio-political, um, and for some folks it might be joy, and some folks it might be grief. So I'll put that
True.
there
That's
too.
true.
Let me
We're
just
seeing
let me
both
name it.
sides. Yep.
But for others, it may feel like that moral injury of violating, like, oh, I don't believe in this, and yet it's happening.
Right. Right. Yes.
And so
Mm-hmm.
there's a grief because now you're disenfranchised, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
grief is like, where do I put this place of like, I don't feel safe anymore to walk the streets freely or something like that, you know?
Right. Right. That's a big loss of personal autonomy, freedom, safety.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. And a great example that grief can happen outside of our immediate worlds, outside of ourself, our families,
Hmm.
even
Hmm.
sometimes our communities,
Hmm.
like on the
Hmm.
grander scale. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it still can impact us just as deeply as if we lost someone close to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times it's like the injury happens and it's not seen. A lot of times it's like the PTSD is like hypervigilance and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
But they coined that term moral injury about 10 years ago and said it's actually not only is it the vicarious trauma that someone experiences, but it's like, you know, it's not acknowledged, right? And
Yeah.
it goes beyond just the hypervigilance and flashbacks and all those kind of things. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And I did a study on that. I mean, they're making it now in a DSM-5 TR, which
Hmm.
is awesome.
That is good.
Just moving towards some progress there. But to just reclaim that, to repair is through some sense of joy, which is through
Yes.
movement, through play,
Yes.
through the ability and the freedom to read books and narratives and literature
Mm-hmm.
that speak to your experience, right? That I like to embody in my sessions.
Mm-hmm. And so you're saying, despite how intense the grief is,
Hmm.
or maybe how outside of your control it is, you still have that option of bringing in joy and mixing in with the grief process.
Hmm.
But, those often feel like opposites.
Right. You're right.
So how can we make them coexist? Is it, you're laying out the how, like, okay, play, connection with nature, books, people. But are there ways we can kind of work through maybe some resistance to holding joy? Because sometimes
Hmm.
feeling joy when you're grieving, it maybe feels like you're betraying the person or the situation.
Yes, yes,
So how can we let
yes.
it be okay that we're having joy?
Right. It reminds me of this quote by Billy Bob Thornton. Can you believe I'm quoting Billy Bob Thornton? But
Wasn't on my bingo card for today.
But he has this fascinating. I play this video all the time with all my clients going through grief because it talks about how can we both feel grief and joy at the same time. So a little bit of background with him. Like I said, it's a 5-minute video he shared with Oprah that talked about him being 12 years old, losing his brother at a very young age from a disease. And he didn't understand it. It was a lot to process. And so he said, forever from that point on, I was 50% happy and 50% sad.
Hmm.
So every time and it touches me so much because it's like every time I have tears or shed tears for him, that's me saying I'm honoring him. I'm showing up, right? The joy I have of having a memory when they play together, right? Sharing an inside joke, those kind of things. I mean, he's like 56 years old, but he was able to say, from that point on, my life, I had to accept the fact. And for folks on the call, yeah, it is hard to be able to say, I have to have radical tolerance that 50% of my life moving forward of losing a loved one, losing autonomy, losing identity is like I'm gonna always feel this way. And I would like to say that, being able to recognize that grief and joy can coexist, even though they feel like opposites, because they share from the same soil, right? The emotional soil, right? So here I go with my plants. I got to do my plant-based. We gotta go with the theme here. So they share the same emotional soil, right? But what happens is grief deepens our capacity for joy because it reminds us of what matters,
Mm.
right?
It's
So
the meaning.
it's the meaning, yes. So joy isn't the absence of grief, okay? It's just this gentle light that enters once we stop fighting the darkness.
Wow. It's like if we
And
welcome in the grief, we welcome in the joy, and vice versa.
exactly. Again, sharing in the same garden. Maybe not the soil, maybe they share in the same garden, right?
Yeah, they're in different
Because
beds or
different,
plots.
right? And a lot of times people kind of will look at a dead bed, right? Like you see a bunch of sunflowers growing, flourishing, oh, someone's really taking gentle care of them. Oh, like all that. But what about the ones that were dying? Why don't we honor what they've given to us, right?
Right. The seeds and the beauty.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
Right. It's
And
not
I would,
erased.
yeah, and I would say with highly sensitive people, especially, we feel both fully, right? And it's really kind of expanding our own nervous system to hold both truths at once.
Yes.
And we can hold both fully because we have full capacity. Living this life is like the beauty and the pain in living in this life is being able to feel the full spectrum of emotions. And that
Yes.
includes grief and that includes joy.
Mm-hmm. And you're right. As HSPs, we feel both equally. Our emotional spectrum is a lot larger. Um, so and you're so right that there's beauty wrapped up in the grief. I think it was David Kessler who added on the sixth stage of grief, meaning. It's like,
Mm,
which
mm,
makes sense because it's not that we accept and move on, it's that we remember what happened, how it
mhm,
impacted us.
mhm,
And yeah, if that bed of sunflowers is past, right?
mhm,
Doesn't mean they
mhm.
never existed,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. There is growth there. April, I love that. And I love that last piece, that meaning, because if I had to be transparent here, I I went into play therapy to cultivate joy, right?
Yeah.
Like I recall 2 years ago when I had my training, um, I was scared to do grief. I was like, I'm not a grief counselor, I'm not a grief counselor. Because I was at the time I didn't have anyone close to me who died. And that's what I had in my mind. I thought that's the only way
Right.
that grief happens. Someone close to me had to die. And I'll never forget, she's such a great teacher. My supervisor and teacher at the time for play therapy said, well, Angelique, it's grief is for anyone who's ever loved someone, loved something, and it's gone.
Hmm.
If you ever loved anything and now it's gone, that's grief. And I
Right.
was like, wow. so she expanded my mind,
Yeah.
right? And it was such a beautiful, so I was able to kind of go into play therapy, that using that modality to understand that I can help a child, even an adult, with processing whoever they once loved that's no longer here, that's gone.
Right. Right, because by that definition, we've experienced grief probably by the age of 1 or 2, losing our binky or our favorite toy or whatever it is, right? That ability to be carried around by a parent 24/7.
Mhm,
Just there's
mhm, mhm,
losses around every corner, of
mhm.
something we've loved or been attached
Yeah,
to.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So you reminded me of like being on it, like again, acknowledging where I was coming from, like not knowing, being scared of, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine there's some listeners here who feel as though like if I say it out loud, then that means it's real.
Yeah. It can be
Or
scary to say it out loud.
I lost a home, right? Maybe I wasn't really attached to the home, but because, right?
Right, still lost it.
The meaning behind it. Or I lost, a friendship that didn't serve me well.
Mm-hmm. Right. Or like you said, parts of self, parts of identity or autonomy or health.
Hmm. Health. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Who am I
Yeah.
now?
Right.
Hmm.
Who am I now? And HSPs, we are thinking about these deeper questions. We are feeling into the nuance because, as you describe grief opening up, like we put grief in this box, we put trauma in this box, but grief is more than having a death. Trauma is more than going to war, right? It's so much more layers to it. And as HSPs, we're feeling all those layers. So to actually have it recognized and validated and create space for it so we can actually sit with it and work with it, yeah, it's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
And you
Dealing with
were,
the rupture and the repair. Hmm.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I appreciate you kind of opening it up for us and seeing that, well, one, grief shows up throughout our whole lives in
Yes.
many different ways, whether we're aware of
Yes.
it or not.
Right.
And two, there's so many ways to welcome grief in and to sit with it and but not let it consume us. We can have the grief and we can have other parts of our experience.
Hmm.
So when we're
Hmm.
carrying around a sense of loss, what are some gentle ways we can reconnect with our joy?
Hmm.
Um, are there other ways that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, a couple things we shared about, the daily nature walks, mindful movement,
Yeah.
right? If
Mm-hmm.
you want to sorry about my cat meowing, if you hear that.
Love a cat visit.
This their world, listening
That's
to grief
right.
and death, right? Um, Even being able to like listening to music that honors your mood. So if you want to listen to an angry playlist, say
Yes.
cancer, right? I had one when my sister was going through cancer. I was like, "Fuck cancer," so I had a playlist to get all my emotion, that energy out, because music is energy. It is a being, right?
Mm.
And so I think like metal, some people like metal, they want to get a mosh pit, they want to, disrespect their
Mm-hmm.
surroundings safely, obviously, but
Right.
kind of feel something. Creating small rituals, that's a big one.
Mm.
Lighting a candle, writing a letter, goodbye letter. I don't say grief letter, I say goodbye letter. What are the things I miss about you? I remember this time, like really allowing the child, and I do that with children's as young as like 5 years old, being able to say that, or they use toys or puppets to kind of symbolize that, right?
Yeah.
Planting something,
Oh,
right?
good one. Yep.
So a very nice container bed, or, even just a nice plant inside. What does that mean for you? What are you
Mm.
growing? What are you nurturing, right?
Mm.
I
Mm.
think sharing stories, or laughter with other people. Maybe if you maybe have a small community or no community, listen to your favorite comedian podcast.
Yeah, I like that too, right? There can be those connections from afar.
Hmm. And most importantly, I want to share that joy doesn't demand we just move on.
Mm.
It
Mm-hmm.
invites us to move with, like I told you, we move with grief. To understand that love can transform shape, but not disappear, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that self-love we go into ourselves is just as important, right? and
That's so
some in the
true.
small ways, creating those rituals.
Mm-hmm. Right. And rituals for me, they provide a sense of kind of stability,
Mm-hmm.
safety for me, like a little bit of containment. I'm not just out here swimming in the grief untethered. I've got something to plant my feet on the ground. Okay, every morning I'm lighting this candle. I'm taking a moment to acknowledge the grief, and I'm not letting it fill up my whole day, every moment take
Mm-hmm.
over.
Mm-hmm.
Really
Mm-hmm.
helps.
One more thing too, people always no, let me back up.
Mm-hmm.
I encourage clients, folks to say, talk to the person you loved. Talk to them out loud, right? I remember I had a client who said she called her mother every single day. She's in like an early 50s and she missed that, right? The ritual of waking up and talking. And I was like, well, she's not gone, right?
Yeah,
It just looks different.
right.
So have a conversation with her. It's like, I'm making coffee today. And so it's like she's just there with you,
Yeah,
whoever that person is. Maybe it's a cat and they have a collar, you know,
right. That you
right?
can keep out and visit.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things I like to encourage. And um, it's tough because grief, people feel like it's one of those things you don't talk about. And well-meaning people at work, right?
Yeah, saying like,
Yeah.
oh, it's gonna be fine. They're not suffering anymore, or whatever it is. The niceties that people think are making you feel better are actually invalidating. Is that what you're referring to?
I am.
Yeah.
So maybe for folks who are listening and say, I do have someone maybe I haven't experienced grief or loss, but I know someone who is, and I'm kind of stuck.
Yeah.
I really love this advice that someone shared with me. One is ask the person, how are you feeling right now at 6:36 p.m.? That's my time. So literally asking them because grief is a teacher, right? And the lessons that grief has taught me is presence.
Mm.
And so being reminded of like, how do you feel right now at this time? How is grief showing up for you right now? Right? It's phenomenal. Like not say, what's the word? Let me know when you need something. Let me help you. Do it. Just do it.
Just do it, because then it
Drop the
puts.
meal off.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Just show up, because otherwise it puts the burden on the person grieving.
Correct. Yeah.
Yep.
But I wanted to put that out there, like, um, some of the ways to support someone at work. Maybe you're a manager, maybe you're people leader, whatever, and you have a colleague who's experiencing it, or maybe even just going into the season. We're coming back from the holidays.
Yep. Yep.
And you may have some people who are going to be a little bit more sad, right? And
Yeah.
that's comes from their feelings of family estrangement,
Right.
financial loss, all the things. And it's like being mindful of like, if they don't want to come back to the happy hour, don't.
Yeah. Let them skip it. Don't give them a hard time.
Put an invitation. Don't show up. We know this is a hard time for people, so if you don't need a show, don't show. Less burden. hmm
That's such an easy way to offer support by giving permission slip to the
hmm
person to take care of themselves. Yeah, so if you don't
100%.
know how to support someone, make it easier for them, right?
hmm
Tell them,
hmm
we're having this gathering, you don't have to come. We want
Yep.
people to take care of themselves. I don't know if you could give them the day off or whatever it is, right? Or
Maybe
just do something for
change a
them.
bereavement plan. I'm kidding, but that's another
Yeah,
story.
sure. But, it's something to put a little nudge for people, right?
hmm
This is great because this is something people often don't know how to do. Even I've tried to think about how I'm talking with people that are going through grief actively or
mm
maybe more long term, making sure I'm not putting the burden on them to take care of me. I'm not saying, oh, I'm so sorry or whatever it is. Instead, I'm just, oh, that must be hard. Or I'd be happy to do XYZ for you, right?
hmm
Instead of making them do more work. And I think it's such a small change, but it can make a big difference in people that are feeling so heavy in that moment. So yeah, I appreciate this layer of the conversation because it's not just us, it's how can we support others going through grief too.
Right, right. And then knowing that we don't have to rush to fix the problem.
Yeah.
A lot of times people think you got to rush and perform and rush to fix and perform resilience, but grief really just
Yeah.
ask us to pause, feel, and remember our connectedness.
Mhm. That's
All right,
it.
sorry. Hold on a
It's
sec.
oh, you need a minute. Yeah. Yeah, it's just a good reminder to kind of slow everything down and just be with the person in the moment. Yeah, I love that. So, Angelique, you're saying grief is a teacher, right? It's here as a way to show us more of the layers. But and we might have already tapped in this a little bit, but what lesson do you think it's offering us right now, collectively?
Hmm. That's a great question. I think it's calling us back to collective care, reminding us that healing happens in community and not in isolation. We
Hmm.
saw what happened with COVID. That's a big thing. Huge grief,
Yeah.
not in just the losses of people who died by COVID, but also the social political climate, the sense of safety, the sense of community, isolation. And I really truly believe that kind of grief, this collective grief we're experiencing is really telling us how disconnected we are, right? And that
Hmm.
healing can only happen not only happen, one of the ways it can really happen, let me back up, is in relationships, right? Healthy relationships, systems that are broken, but there is some solution on the way, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And we're not seeing that right now. And it's just gets people to be more isolated, to feel unheard, unloved, unsupported, not supported, right? And I built my practice to care for the hope brokenhearted.
Mm.
Hmm.
That's beautiful. Right
Who
to
tends to the heartbroken person? Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. And you're right that the last 5 years or so have really shown us a lot of collective grief and those deficits in our community connections. I think we need that more now than ever.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. Well, is there any final thoughts or messages for the HSP listeners who are grieving in one way or another?
Yeah. A lot of us folks out there always feel like you got to toughen up, right? Probably was told that all the time. Oh, things will get better. Don't think about it. All those things. But I'm here to remind you that your sensitivity is your strength. So again, in the words of Billy Bob Thornton, right? You're gonna feel 50% happy and 50% sad. And it's okay that the tears, the mood shift, all those things is honoring that. Right? You're showing up for yourself deeply. But pace yourself gently, right? I feel like it's this message I always want to share with others, and I wish I would have had as my inner child, my to myself is like, you're not broken for feeling too much.
Right.
You're wired to notice the beauty and the pain in equal measure, right?
Hmm.
And be sure to let that sensitivity guide you towards that compassion, right? And not that self-blame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that reminder that it's both. I think we focus more
Hmm.
on feeling pain and stress more deeply, but we
Hmm.
also have the other side of it, which is beauty and joy, all happiness, all of it. So yeah, I appreciate that reminder. Just let it all in.
Hmm. It reminds me of this Japanese author, so Hirataki. I'm gonna butcher the name, but I remember he's a Japanese author talked about the male loneliness back in the 80s. And
Mm,
we're singing now. And he has this quote that I love, which is like, life is full of pain, suffering is optional, right?
exactly. Yes, that's right.
So I think I may have said in my last one, but that's something that really resonates with me is
Mm-hmm.
understanding like I can be sensitive to the fact that, you know, life is pain.
Yeah,
There are painful moments, but the suffering of it, which sometimes people with grief think that, oh, if I grieve or allow myself, that's suffering. No,
yeah,
it's actually part of the pain and the beauty
that's it.
of this thing called life, right? Mhm.
That's it. It is woven into the fabric of life. It's not something that is optional. It's something that's always going to be there. So if we can sit with it and welcome it in and let it intermix with other experiences. Yeah, I love that.
Right.
That's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. This is
Angelique,
lovely.
it's been lovely. Thank you so much for this conversation, for kind of, I think it's so important to open the perspective on grief and look at other ways in. And I see we have a kitty visitor, which I love. Oh, I always love a cat visitor.
Yeah.
Um, so for folks who want to dive more into your resources, I'll make sure I share all of that you have to offer in the show notes, your website, your social media. You have a new Joy Revenge book list, which I'm excited about. Can you tell listeners a little bit more about what the book list is and working with you?
Yes, so earlier I alluded to like the four pillars of healing, right? And so I found this gathered a list of books because all my clients are like, what podcast should I listen to? What books? So I said, let me just put a book list together
I love it.
that talks about how do we get in this way, as adults, we can reclaim joy in kind of a revengeful way. Like, despite kind of the pain, despite all this stuff happening, how can I gain that? And so some of this aligns with my pillars of like, okay, maybe I
Mm,
want to learn more about play or, nature. And I have just a book list of that. So if you can
oh,
download
cool.
it on my website at foyfletchertherapy.com.
Perfect. That's great. Yeah, because it's true that I feel like some as therapists, we have access to a lot more resources just because we're exposed to it through trainings, through
Sure,
colleagues.
sure.
And so yeah, I think it's always important to pass those resources along. And you've made it a lot easier. So thank you for that.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, yes, I'm excited to share that offering. And,
Right.
some people think they have to be a resource or be a source versus being a resource when it comes to
Mm.
grief. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. I love that
Like,
that
so.
shift in perspective. And if folks want to work with you one to one
Mhm.
or face to face, what are the options for that you have available?
Yes, so again, you can visit my website at foyfletchertherapy.com and you can click the book a consult, and I'm happy to talk with you for free 15 minutes to talk through my services, or whether walking, like for folks who live in the Missouri area,
Mhm.
Kansas area, I do offer in-person walk and talk or virtual sessions. If you're like a parent or a caregiver of someone of even an aging parent, right,
Mm-hmm.
and you're experiencing ambiguous loss,
Right.
right,
Mm-hmm.
or anticipatory grief, right? That's a real, I offer those sessions as well. That's 15 minutes. So
Oh,
yeah. And you
beautiful.
can email me at Angelique at foyfletchertherapy.com, and
Perfect.
yep, you'll see it in the notes.
Yep, I'll be sure to include that. So you have a variety of options for folks who are local to you, but also maybe who are
Hmm.
around the country.
Yep. And do
Okay.
workshops as well. I can customize and do virtual workshops on topics like grief and play therapy.
Perfect. I love it. Well, thank you so much again. I always appreciate connecting with you, Angelique.
Yeah, thank you. This is wonderful.